Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the first Film Foundations episode of the State of the Union. If you are here on the Disconnected channel watching this, this is going to be on the Film Foundations channel moving forward, and maybe sometimes on the Disconnected channel. We are doing this as a brand new segment that will be every single month to recap the previous month. So today, we are covering the month of June. And the way we're going to do it, we're going to break down some very common things that we would want to talk about. We're going to go over, this is a really funny format, but at the top of the show, we're going to memorialize some of the big deaths in pop culture.
Hilarious, everybody. Right hilarious at the top here.
Yeah. Then we're going to go into some modern movie news. We're going to go into some recommendations and throw in a couple skips there. We're going to go into some physical media recommendations, and then Chris is going to have some just general pop culture recommendations. And then we're going to have the two of us battle it out over a top 10 ranking on the spot that one of us doesn't know what the topic's going to be. So it's going to be super fun. But before we get into it, Chris, what do you think about State of the Union? How do you feel about us doing this?
I'm excited because we were talking about this right before we started, before we went live. We don't necessarily, well, I guess you do probably, you do more than I do, I think, get to talk about like modern movie news and modern stuff and kind of because I mean, that's the thing. I mean, obviously with the film industry, like any other industry, well, not like any other industry, but like the film industry, the film news, I mean, like it's like new movies, new trailers, stuff like that's always coming out. And let's not pretend we exist in a vacuum here. We just don't really have an outlet to talk about it. So you and I were just like, maybe we should do this once a month as a live thing. So I'm excited. I'm excited to make some people mad by accident. Well, that's the thing. Like, here's the thing. Do people really get bent out of shape about old movie stuff? It depends, but it's people that are like invested into that thing already. For the most part, new movie stuff is like, that's like more people are invested in that because just more people are keeping an eye on recent stuff. And for the most part, the stuff we're going to be talking about is, I think, some of the stuff is more mainstream. Just looking at our outline here of things we're going to talk about, it's pretty mainstream. So that's the other thing. Like, this is probably the most mainstream either one of us will ever be in terms of like anything we do. So yeah, I'm excited. What about you?
I think to counter something you said, it depends on the audience. I know that for you, a lot of the older stuff gets covered, and you do throw in some new things. But with my stuff, like most people kind of hold the older stuff in more regard. So like when I mention I'm not a big Clint Eastwood person, I get all kinds of people.
You're a little Clint Eastwood person?
That are not happy with me in the comments. And yeah, that happens. But now we get to talk about things that are big deal news with what's coming up, with things like, we're going to be talking about Alamo Drafthouse news. We're going to be talking about brand new physical media releases. We're going to be talking about new in theaters film, stuff like that. It's exciting. I like a lot of the modern stuff as it is happening right now, because there's a lot more discourse on that. There's a lot more that hasn't had time to settle. So it'll be a fun conversation.
Right. And at the end of the day, I mean, again, I for what I do, for the most part, it's not older as much as like less mainstream and more obscure stuff. And yeah, they have their audiences, but yeah, this is the most mainstream thing. I mean, short of talking about MCU movies, which, I mean, again, if you listen to Film Foundations, you know how much of a running gag that is at this point. So yeah. But yeah, why deaths at the top? That's the question. Let's open the show with dead folks, y'all.
It's because it's funny. It's humor of welcome to the show. Now let's talk about the depressing bits.
That's fair.
So the way that we are, the way that we came to be here, this used to be a part of another show that I was on called The Incinerator. The Incinerator has gone into the Incinerator itself, and we got permission and adopted it into Film Foundations. And I imagine at least once or thrice we'll bring our old pal Billy Ray Bruton on to do one of these with us, because he would love to do a State of the Union again, I'm sure.
Or we could just get him to like do a segment, and then we could just like air it like one of those like like Andy Rooney bits at the end, like a minute with Billy Ray Bruton. It's just like him. He wouldn't be complaining. He would be telling us the difference between Dylan O'Brien and oh my god, what the fuck was that guy's name? Dylan Baker and Dylan O'Brien. Jeez, that's a joke that only you, I, and Billy Ray Bruton are gonna get for like the next 8 months. So. God.
No, that episode will come out soon. But people
really? What's soon at this point?
In like 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get started with our celebrity deaths for the month. The biggest one for June has to be hands down Donald Sutherland. He is somebody that I loved in literally everything I saw him in. Probably the biggest one for me is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's going to be the same for many people. But he did so many just amazing movies, and even up to when he was acting in recent films. Like, he, not to shit on the entire Hunger Games franchise, he brought like real acting gravitas to what he did. Him and Philip Seymour Hoffman were easily the best part of the films that they were in. I love him in a lot of that stuff. Got to shout out Clute, got to shout out, I'll just go check out more of his stuff.
Beer Fest. That's what I always remember him from, as the grandpa in Beer Fest who pulls the cord on himself. Goodbye. The little goodbye, Papa. Yeah, Donald Sutherland could be really funny too. Yeah. I know our friend Mike White tried reaching out to Donald Sutherland many times and was rebuffed because Donald Sutherland was Canadian, and we all know Mike White and Canadians don't get along. That's not true at all. That's such a fucking lie. We all know Mike lives like 10 minutes from Canada. That can't be the case.
Obviously, one other title that I've heard a lot in the last couple of weeks that people have been talking about is Don't Look Now.
Right. That's the big one, I think, right? Like, I think it's going to get reappraised by people that have never seen it before, which is a good thing, because, yeah, Don't Look Now is it's a good movie. I don't know how many people are going to resonate with it, but they'll watch it at least, which means, they've seen it, thankfully. So, yeah, hopefully. Donald Sutherland was the big one, for sure. Yeah. The biggest one. A
couple others. We got Tony LoBianco, who's in The French Connection, handful of other films. Good performance, not somebody that I would, held in real reverence necessarily. A couple days ago, Bill Copps, fairly prolific character actor. Biggest one that people in recent years have, seen him in would be Night at the Museum,
right?
And some others. He does great every time he's on screen, though.
He was in a Steven Seagal movie I watched recently, and he was like one of, if not the best part of the whole movie. So, which, it's not saying much, but right. Yeah, Bill, I'm glad that you have tiers of character actors, and when your passing makes the front page of Variety, I think that is, as in terms of as good as it gets as a character actor, that's pretty high up there. Like, character actors pass away every day. Getting mentioned on front page of Variety, like, you made an impact with your work, which is a good thing.
I would agree there. And then finally, I think his last name is pronounced Wiley. We got Taylor Wiley, who most recently was on the show Hawaii Five-0, but was a big part of a movie that you and I both love, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. He was a young dude too. This one sucks.
Yeah. Forgetting Sarah Marshall is a movie that you and I definitely resonate with, for sure. And that movie also had Steve Landesberg in it, who passed away, I think, in the last decade. So, man. I guess 2024 have we had like any massive ones yet? Have we had like a massive passing yet?
Roger Corman is probably... Is
that the one? Okay.
He's had arguably one of the biggest impacts on cinema.
Okay. I was just wondering, because like that's like that was the only one that really comes to mind. Like, right. Some years we have like, it's been 6 months is my point. Like it's been 6 months and we haven't had like, remember 2020 with like Kobe Bryant, stuff like that. That was like, big. So, so far this year, nothing. So good. Let's keep it that way.
Carl Weathers was this year.
Oh, right. God damn it. Jesus.
Richard Lewis was this year.
Carl Weathers. And then they announced Happy Gilmore too. I guess his character is dead in the movie anyways. So, but look, Little Nicky technically showed up there, and he showed up at the end of Happy Gilmore in Heaven with a crocodile and Abraham Lincoln. So,
I know the one that you actually called me crying. I still can't believe we lost Toby Keith this year.
Right. Oh man. That was sad. I love this bar though, and grill.
Oh,
and
right.
Grill.
That is enough about celebrity deaths. Let's get into some of the bigger news stories for the month. We're going to do alternating news stories here. First one that I'm actually kind of happy about because the theatrical situation with film is not doing too hot. We got an announcement that Inside Out 2 is going to do a 100-day theatrical run before it goes to streaming or physical media. And that seems like it's not a big deal. But when you look in the history of the last year, there are films getting announced for physical media before they even hit theaters. And then on top of that, they are only playing for maybe a couple weeks, and then they're on VOD or able to rent maybe 2 weeks later. So this is a massive change, and it probably a good move to give things a little more reference and give them their place in the theater. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's Disney, right? This is like the only company that can do this at this point.
That is the negative, too.
I mean, that is the big negative here. I mean, it's a positive, but again, it's also like, damning with faint praise because it is Disney, ultimately.
Right.
I mean, look, I haven't seen Inside Out 2. I saw Inside Out 1. I don't have any interest in seeing Inside Out 2, but Inside Out 2 clearly has moved the dial and the needle for a whole lot of people, yourself included. I know you went and saw it.
It's great, yeah.
Yeah, I have no interest for a whole host of reasons, both legitimate personal reasons, and just I'm not. If I'm going to go out to see a movie in the theaters, it's really got to move my personal needle. And the next thing I go to see in theaters is not going to be Inside Out 2. It will probably be Longlegs on July 12th. So I'm glad, but it is Disney. So it is. I mean, again, take the good with the bad, but it is Disney. Because fucking Longlegs got announced when it's going to be out on Blu-ray already. Fucking movie's not out yet. Like, the movie's not out yet. I'm not
give it some breathing room.
I'm not complaining, but it is just kind of like comparatively to the way things used to be. I mean, again, I'm not lamenting the need of the old days like some fucking ding-dong. I'm just saying this is really drastic compared to the way it used to be. So, yeah, it's Disney, though, again.
All right. Chris, why don't you tell us about Alamo Drafthouse?
Speaking of things I'm happy about, I'm kidding. I have I'm going to just preface this here first before I say anything else. If you have listened to things that I have worked on or collaborated on or created in the last decade, my feelings on Alamo Drafthouse are well known. I am not a fan of the Alamo Drafthouse for a whole host of reasons. Their shoddy record with sexual assault victims in their establishments, painting sex pests on their original location's wall, even though they knew that was the case. All those things are bad, problematic even. So I just want to get out in front of it.
I knew about the painting, by the way.
Yeah. So at the original Alamo Drafthouse, they had like a mural, and it was like you were looking at the stadium seating, and they painted in like some of the like regulars, and I guess some of those regulars were sex pests towards the wait staff, which is great. I mean, and again, Devin Faraci being rehired, all that fun stuff. So Alamo Drafthouse, not a place that I'm super into personally, professionally, whatever. Them getting sold to Sony, though, is a real not great thing, because it feels like that whole studio system thing that they busted up,
Oh, yes.
And I don't get why this is now okay. I mean, I get why it's okay only in as much as Sony's not going to try to buy Cinemark and Regal and Marcus and everybody. So, I mean, that's not going to happen, I guess. I mean, I don't know. That feels like speaking out of my ass at this point, because theoretically this could be the first step in this coming back to that and leveraging.
Well, the law was reversed, so it could happen.
No, I know. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I know the law's been reversed, but like, laws being reversed does not necessarily mean it happens. It just means the stage is set for people to take advantage of it. Clearly, we're seeing that now. So I don't know. I mean, look, you kind of already talked about it. I think it's pretty prescient that your first one and my first and your first piece of news are about the theater system. I've gone and seen a movie in the theaters in the last month, so have you. And there was fucking nobody in the theater, like zero, not a single person. And
I had a lot of people in mind, surprisingly.
Well, I mean, you saw Inside Out 2, on opening weekend, right?
I did, yeah.
That's good. I mean, that is a good thing. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I don't think people should go see movies in the theaters, but I wouldn't be supporting if I wasn't supporting Alamo Drafthouse before, which I wasn't, is what I'm saying, I'm definitely not going to be supporting them now. This is a step too far as I'm concerned, and everybody, as far as I can tell that I've talked to about this also, and most people I've talked to like the Alamo Drafthouse. I am in a minority here among people. It's me and a couple other people that feel this way that I know. My other thinking, and this is what I've heard from people that like Alamo Drafthouse, is, oh, good, now the quality of the Alamo Drafthouse is going to go down the tubes, and I was just like, yeah, well, obviously. So that's the point. Like, everybody knows that now the quality is going to go down the tubes. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not a good thing for people that like Alamo Drafthouse, and it's just one more drop in the bucket of things that people who don't like Alamo Drafthouse, like myself, can just point at it and go, well, now how can you even support this company? So, and in response to what movies did we see, we do read the comments, but that is actually going to be answered in a moment. Just a moment. But yeah, I'm glad that the movie theater system still exists, but this is going to be a problem moving forward. And I know it, you know it, we all know it. And if we're not addressing it, it's just going to get to the point where they have to do something about it again in like 10 years. So
this is the second time in the last, we'll say, 3 months that something within the film industry has been purchased by a big person. And Sony purchasing Alamo, and then we got the Criterion Collection, and all of that entity being purchased by basically a billionaire and a production company. And in both instances, they both come in and say, not much is going to happen. We're going to let them operate the way they always have. Unfortunately, we all are not naive, and we know that that's not always the case. In fact, it's never the case. Something changes eventually. And so what could happen? Theoretically, it could be all positive things. They could dump a bunch of money into it, expand it, and change the way that the theater experience is for everybody. Will that happen? Probably not.
We're cynics here, folks. I'd like to believe that's the case, but again, Alamo Drafthouse, without Sony at the wheel, was making enough bad decisions on their own that they did not need Sony, who makes bad decisions on their own, to help them facilitate more bad decision making with a bigger budget, is kind of what I'm worried about. And again, I mean, if you're a fan of the Alamo Drafthouse, yeah, like you said, you can see it one of two ways. I assume that there've got to be people that also see it as a positive, like, oh, like you said, like, oh, Alamo Drafthouse, now they're probably going to have bigger, more obscene theaters with more horse shit being built, right?
Well, and let's say something positive here. On the bright side, all of the Dallas area Alamo Drafthouses that were closed down,
right,
just yesterday got announced that they're reopening, which is a big deal. I mean, that was a big hit. I think just in Dallas there are 5 of them. So to close 5 theaters, and granted, I don't know when they're opening, but at the moment, it was literally only closed for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, there were still places to go see movies. I know that, I'm sorry, the Draft House wasn't available, but there were still plenty of other places in that 3-week period.
So yeah, those 5 and 1 other are being reopened. That is a good thing.
Right, yeah. And that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned, only primarily because it gives people their jobs back. I could give singular shits about Draft House. And again, I'm sorry if that makes people upset, but I mean, there's plenty of reason to not like the Alamo Draft House that has nothing to do with their movies. It has everything to do with the way the company's managed. And guess what? If you don't hold a company to a higher standard, then essentially you're just letting them get away with it. And if you don't know about it, that's one thing. And I completely understand not knowing about it, not keeping up with it. That's fine. But if you're told about it and you continue to support them, I don't know what to say, I guess. That's where I'm coming.
And who knows? Sony could fix all that from the inside out again.
I mean, technically technically that stuff's already been fixed for the most part. Like, a lot of those people are gone. I mean, Tim League was one of the people he's the one who rehired Devin Faraci, which was like the optics wise terrible idea. They fired him the next day. They fired him, rehired him in secret, and then fired him again when everybody found out that he had been rehired. Like, guys, yeah, it's, again, they don't need Sony to make bad decisions is my point. It's just they're being enabled more now, possibly. But again, for the most part, all the management that was there originally is gone. If anything, Tim League's probably just cashing big-ass billion-dollar checks or whatever. And I'm sure he owned part of Draft House still or still had a stake. So he's getting a big paycheck now, too. So good for him. I mean, good for him. That's a success story. That is a thing that doesn't happen in this day and age anymore. A small boutique chain being sold to a big, like studio. That's really not a thing anymore. So it's a good thing for indie studio system, the indie studio system idea, but look at what's happened to it, is my point. Like, even now, it's gone into this other thing of, like, it's owned by Sony. Okay.
Well, speaking of bad decisions and big checks,
Right.
Let's bring up that we found out just, I think it was this last week, that Spaceballs 2 is in development. And,
The search for more money.
I gotta say, the fact that the first film jokes about the unnecessary sequel for this is such a just not good idea. Like, all of the headlines are already written for critics. Nobody needs to even have a good idea, because you can literally just say, well, the search for more money was in and it failed, or something like that. Because
they didn't find any more money. We didn't find shit.
So I love Spaceballs. I'm not going to argue with that. Spaceballs is amazing. However, this feels like an awful idea. And I hate saying that the week of literally Mel Brooks' 98th birthday. But
how dare you? How dare you?
This seems so bad, but it's exacerbated by the fact that Josh Gad is a part of this. Why?
We go from Alamo Drafthouse hate to Josh Gad hate.
Why?
We were talking about this before we turned the cameras on to record. You asked me, like, thoughts on Josh Gad. I don't dislike Josh Gad. I don't think as much as you clearly do. I think he's great on stage, but I think, like, he's Olaf as well. Like, which is like, he's Olaf too, which is like part and parcel with Josh Gad. Like, Olaf's just Josh Gad's voice. Like, it's just Josh Gad doing Josh Gad. Which again, like, if you like his theatricalness of who he is, like, you're going to vibe with that. It's not my thing. It's really not your thing, clearly. And we both like musical theater, so it has nothing to do with that. Like, some people would say the same thing about someone that I really like, which is Jonathan Groff. Speaking of Frozen, wink, wink. Yeah, he's very easy on the eyes as well.
I was just waiting to hear the word attractive there.
I mean, he is. It's the truth. But at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, yeah, Josh Gad doesn't rankle me as much as he clearly rankles you. It makes sense for Josh Gad to be in Spaceballs, because he's going to play Mog's son, Mog 2.
Wow.
Electric Mogaloo.
Mogaloo. Yeah, I feel like this is not going to end well, but things that could end up better, maybe? Why don't you give us the next bit of news?
No, speaking of bad decisions and lots of money being spent, Jesus Christ. Yeah, my final piece of news that I want to bring up, and I guess these have kind of all been a piece. Yours was about a thing that people are spending money on that you would concede they don't need to, and boy, this was the case. So, Universal, in their infinite wisdom, because I guess they just had, as you do, $400 million lying around, just taking up space, decided, hey, let's buy the rights to The Exorcist, a franchise that is no way, shape, or fucking form worth $400 million. You know what? Congratulations to whoever drove that fucking price up, because they did the good. They're the real fucking devil there, boy. I'll tell you what, they put one over fucking on them. So, David Gordon Green, someone who I'm not a fan of his horror work, other than the first 15 minutes of Halloween Ends, which is some of the greatest some of the greatest fake out filmmaking I've ever seen, directed Exorcist Believer, which came out last year. Did you end up seeing
say the title without watching or without laughing?
Did you see it?
No, here's the thing. I'm not
tell you something.
I'm not super against it. Like, I actually think I'm going to like a lot of it, but also the fact that they got, like, ancient Ellen Burstyn to come back and make the lines that she did happen on screen is appalling to me. I like the idea of continuing it, because I've never been happy with the franchise. Like, most of the sequels suck, except for part 3, obviously. But, I'm worried.
Well, you didn't see Believer. You should have been worried, because I watched Believer, and it's bad. It was so bad, apparently, that David Gordon Green left the franchise. That's a night that is not what happened. He was Paul Feige'd away from the franchise. They were like, sometimes we had bad ideas. This was one of them. So not only is Exorcist Believer now a movie with a cliffhanger ending that, I guess not a cliffhanger ending, was sort of a cliffhanger ending, unresolved ending, is now never going to be handled, which is hilarious. Because who doesn't love putting a teaser for Dark Universe at the beginning of your movie and then it never actually becoming a thing? The Mummy 2017. Now Mike Flanagan has been roped into directing an Exorcist movie. That's what it feels like. Because the biggest horror movie franchise that, I guess, in terms of money spent, needed to get the biggest horror movie director right now. And, I mean, look, I like Mike Flanagan a lot. I like Mike Flanagan's movies. I like Mike Flanagan's Netflix work. I think they're both really good. I think he has a distinct and unique horror movie voice because he also writes a lot of the stuff that he directs, right? He's like writing mostly everything he directs.
Almost all of it, yeah.
So, first off, Mike Flanagan, I think one of the first movies he directed was a fucking WWE horror movie, which is hilarious. I believe he directed Oculus, which is a WWE-produced horror movie, and it has WWE stars in it, in like bit parts, which is hilarious. But now he's directing The Exorcist, which I'm perfectly fine with because it's going to be its own thing. But for me, I think The Exorcist should just stay dead, right?
I mean,
right? Like, you alluded to the idea that, like, as a franchise, the sequels haven't been great, and 2 has its defenders. 3 is a fun movie that I really like a lot, and I think 3 is a great sequel to the original Exorcist, but it's one of those things that, yeah, it's a kind of weird. Again, like, it's a sequel, but then it has its own thing of being like a director's cut. But for me, 1 and 3 kind of exist as their own thing, and then everything else, take it or leave it. I don't need a Believer to begin with. And like you said, Ancient Ellen Burstyn, I was about to ruin the movie for everybody who hasn't seen it. I'm not going to do that. But you can assume as a legacy sequel, there will be certain people that will come back because it's a legacy sequel. Wink, wink.
Who else is there?
Right. There's literally one other person, and that's it.
They resurrected Max von Sydow.
Yeah, right. I think at the end of the day, Mike Flanagan, whatever, he's going to bring a unique, distinct voice to it. I think it's a good idea that he's the one doing it because of the visibility of the franchise, but why in God's name are we beating The Exorcist with the dead horse with a stick is my question.
Why are we beating The Exorcist with a dead horse?
Why? I mean, at this point, but I mean, like $400 million was such an investment that, like, I guess that this was the only option was to keep funneling money in. Have we heard of the sunk cost fallacy? I guess there isn't that with franchises. Like, I don't get it. Because, like, again, for me, we can tell an exorcism story without the fucking franchise tagged onto it. Hereditary is halfway to an exorcism movie. Like, there's no exorcism, but it's the possession part of the movie without the exorcist part of them. Right. And at this point, like, I don't need to see an exorcism movie because there is an exorcism movie. It's called The Exorcist. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of made its...
And there's a new one called The Exorcism.
Well, yeah, but also, and like any exorcism movie that I have enjoyed since The Exorcist has been something a little bit more adjacent and kind of akin to like a action horror movie like Constantine or The Pope's Exorcist, which was kind of fun in a stupid way. But for me, I just, maybe this will get Mike Flanagan's Netflix stuff to be on physical media. Maybe Mike... Right, but like maybe this Exorcist, maybe this will be successful and everybody will go flock to Mike Flanagan's stuff, like more so than they already have. Because again, like this is the highest profile thing he's ever going to have done other than Dr. Sleep, right? Like that's the thing. Like, I guess I don't know what is Mike Flanagan has to gain from this is what I'm getting at. Like, I think
have much to gain. I genuinely think he has a chance at making it better.
Right. Same. But like, he has nothing to gain from this. The only thing that has to gain from this is the Exorcist franchise as a whole, because it's in a really bad spot right now of its own making.
I don't know if you heard, but rumor is Hush has been picked up and will be on actual physical media, not a bootleg like this soon.
I believe it.
it's not on Netflix right now. It got pulled. And the rumor is that it is coming out very soon from some physical media company. So I'm very curious to see what that is going to be.
Well, and again, like that's why I said the idea of like maybe this will make Mike Flanagan's stuff that's already been successful even more visible for other people. So I don't have an issue with it. Obviously, for me, $400 million on The Exorcist was such a fucking bad idea. Like, still, like, let me ask you before we go to movie.
That was just the rights for the franchise. That wasn't even making the film. That's the shittiest part.
I know. I had to ask you a kind of a question that came out of my mind before we go to movie recommendations. What movie franchise rights is worth $400 million to you?
Ooh,
in the horror sphere only in the horror sphere. Is there one? Like, goddamn, $400 million, almost $500 million for The Exorcist. Really?
Here's the thing. If you get all rights to all characters and there's never going to be a legal problem on what you can put out, I think, like, if you can merchandise everything too, I think Halloween and Friday the 13th could be worth that. But you have to be prepared to not make money until probably your third year in. Because when you are out at Spirit Halloween, there's Halloween stuff everywhere. There's Michael Myers stuff everywhere. There's Jason Voorhees stuff everywhere. So if you're able to do those and make new video games, which the community is hungry for right now, and make new movies, which for Friday the 13th, the community's kind of hungry for. Halloween, probably not so much at the moment, but you're making money on everything else with Halloween. So new movies aren't super necessary yet, but in 10 years, reboot it. Nobody's going to care. I feel like either one of those you could do very well, and they're both kind of in limbo. Like the Halloween, nobody loved the way the last one ended. Friday the 13th, there's the rights. I believe somebody owns the rights to the two Jason Voorhees, and somebody owns the rights to the name Friday the 13th.
Correct,
and they're not the same person.
Correct.
So that is going to fuck everything up. Period. So it's kind of a lost cause. Like there's so much that 400 million could get you from those, but it's not feasible.
So in the comments, someone mentioned Star Wars. And so to put in perspective, Star Wars, you know how much Disney bought the rights to Star Wars for, right?
If I remember right, it was like barely over 400.
No, it was $4 billion.
Okay.
So this is 10 times the price. Is The Exorcist worth 1/10 of Star Wars is the better question.
No.
The Exorcist, like, for me, The Exorcist, the first movie, we've talked about this so many times. The Exorcist is a perfect movie. It's an amazing movie. It's an important movie. It's in the film registry for a reason. But it doesn't need sequels. And it never did, and it never has. You don't have to have The Exorcist tied to the name about your exorcism movie. There's a movie coming out with Russell Crowe, again, another exorcism movie with Russell Crowe. This is like his cottage industry now. Yep. Just called The Exorcism, and it is a fictionalized retelling of The Exorcist's story on set. That's what it's got to be, right? It's like they're just like playing it up. Someone saw that Cursed Films thing on Shudder and was like, well, let's turn this into a fictionalized thing, which, you know what? Right. I'm here for. I think it's a great idea. I want to see it. I've heard it's not necessarily the best thing in the world, but I mean, that's interesting to me, more interesting to me than a movie called The Exorcist : whatever the fuck. What is it going to be called? The First Exorcist? The Last Exorcist? I don't know. That's the thing. Just, you can make exorcism movies without the name The Exorcist, period. And especially if it's going to be its own thing and it's not going to be tied to the original and it's not going to have anything to do with anything else, why does it need to be The Exorcist? It's just, I don't get it. It's just, there's nothing that needs to tie them together, and there never has been, other than you forcing Ellen Burstyn into your movie or forcing Linda Blair into your movie, which is effectively what they've done with the franchise otherwise. So, yeah.
I agree fully.
Yeah.
I'll also agree with Peter here in the comments, who says the Exorcist franchise shouldn't have ever been a thing. It should have only been a one and done, and the second one sucked. And then they made it up with 3. Sure, but also
3 is so different. It's has nothing to do with exorcisms at all.
Right.
Yeah. 3 is amazing for completely like unrelated reasons is what it feels like.
I agree. And now, after our movie news, let's get into movie recommendations. And if you watch my show, you've probably heard some of these, but for listeners of Film Foundations, this will not be a thing. They won't hear many of these because we're not going to be talking about the modern things that often that we're watching unless it's for an episode. And the first thing I got to watch is probably the best movie I've seen this year, like by a long shot. I loved The Chaser from 2008. Just watched this for the first time. It is by the same director that did The Wailing, which is a South Korean like folk horror movie that I loved. And then went into this only knowing just like very, very minute plot points. And this thing blew me away. This thing is bleak from like a couple minutes into it and never slows down. I really expected to get sort of bored with it, but no, like this movie is one of the best made, like airtight plots that I've seen in quite some time. I have now found myself dying to see everything that this director has put out. Literally, this movie is about a gentleman who is trying to go... The best way to say it is he's essentially a pimp trying to go back and save one of his sex workers. And he is chasing somebody that he does not know what they've done to his sex worker. And when he goes to discover this individual that has done something with his sex worker, it turns into a dramatic chase film throughout a lot of the movie, not quite the entire movie, but he is... finally caught, and they're both apprehended by the cops because they can't quite tell what's going on. And when you are watching this movie, this is like an Uncut Gems type film where your tension and your heart rate is just ramped up the entire time. This movie is so well done. Everybody should check it out. Just got a fairly recent, really nice Blu-ray release from Umbrella in Australia, and it is a really solid disc. Everybody should look at it. It's region free. No matter where you live, if you got a Blu-ray player, you can play it.
I haven't heard of it. Sounds good. Sounds interesting. South Korean cinema's great.
And I don't think it's a spoiler, but I will say if you are into serial killer crime dramas, that's what this is at the heart.
I Saw the Devil, huh?
Very similar feelings.
Interesting. Is it? Have you watched a lot of South Korean cinema?
I adore South Korea.
Have you seen Mr. Go?
No.
Oh my God. It's a movie about a gorilla that plays baseball. A giant gorilla that plays baseball in South Korea. I'm not joking. And it's also like, it's not as much fun as it sounds, but it's also way more insane than you have any idea it could ever be. Mr. Go. And the movie Ryan was talking about was The Chaser.
Interesting. Peter, I was talking about The Chaser, and then Twitch watcher Mr. Go and Mrs. Stop.
Mr. Go, I covered Mr. Go a couple years on the Culture Cast. It's a fucking wild movie, dude. It's wild.
When is it from? Is it
so I was in South Korea in 2011 or 12, and that is when it came out because it was in theaters when I was there, so it's fairly modern. I think you can find previews for it on YouTube. But yeah, it's a gorilla playing baseball. Like,
it's more modern than The Chaser. Interesting.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Speaking of more modern than either of the movies we just talked about, and gorilla adjacent, speaking of a recommendation that I would definitely be advising everybody check out, because to say that there's nothing like this movie is literally the case. It came out this year, Sasquatch Sunset, which is one of the most endearing things I've seen in a while. Also, one of the strangest movies I've ever seen, because what it is it is a comedy drama. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe. So it's a movie about four Sasquatches that live in the woods, and the entire movie is following them. And the Sasquatches are played by Riley Keough and Jesse Eisenberg, and they never talk, and you can't tell it's them. And it's insane. I mean, it is a movie about following Sasquatches and their lives in the woods, and that's an hour and a half movie, and there's no dialogue, there's no talking heads. It's not a documentary. There's no Richard Attenborough. It's played bracingly straight, if that makes sense. I mean, there are moments of comedy, but they're not they're not hanging a lantern on it. It's just like, look at what those Sasquatches are doing. Isn't that wild? They're wild animals, but they're also halfway to being humans, or 2/3 of the way.
Well, and you see Sasquatches fucking, from what I hear.
You see Sasquatches fucking. You see Sasquatches shitting and lactating, and again, there's a lot going on in Sasquatch Sunset. But it's way more endearing than it has any right to be. I think the thing for me that I really love about it, and again, this is someone whose stuff I've begun to appreciate a hell of a lot more than I used to, is also produced by Ari Aster, who. Ari Aster, I think he has his finger on the pulse of weird things and weird things that I resonate with specifically. Sasquatch Sunset is something that if you can check it out, you should check it out. It is totally worth. I guess the hype. I mean, there was a fair amount of hype around it on the what's it called, the circuit, the
film festival circuit,
the festival circuit. It got some pretty big praise and applause in the studio circuit. But, I mean, that doesn't mean anything for the mainstream, is what I'm getting at, unfortunately. And sometimes it means too much for certain movies. But Sasquatch Sunset is definitely one worth checking out. It's not going to be for everybody, but yeah, if you want to watch a movie where Sasquatches do Sasquatch things, and you ever want to see Jesse Eisenberg dressed up like Sasquatch for an hour and a half, this is the movie for you. That's what they should put on the box, right on the front of it.
And I don't know that I've ever thought about that.
A tour de foot, as I would say.
All right. Speaking of 2024 films, the next two that we're going to be talking about are from 2024. And the first one is one that if you're into physical media like myself, you may have seen that it just got a recent release. So I really wanted to highlight this one again because Love Lies Bleeding from Rose Glass came out this year. And I think it got kind of passed by because this and then one of the Coen brothers made their movie at the same time, and it kind of was marketed similarly, and people kind of threw them in the same bucket and then walked away because they both just didn't appeal to them. But Love Lies Bleeding is a rather great movie. It is this almost like a return to erotic thrillers in a way, but not in the classic erotic thriller trope filled way. It's more of a modern sweaty tale of these bad characters in a bad town with a bad motive and a bad agenda that they're trying to fulfill. And everything about this is acted to perfection. Kristen Stewart is magnificent and always great, so I'm so glad that she's in this. Katie O'Brien is appearing opposite from her, and not only is she a giant actor in this film, she becomes giant literally in this movie. And so I will reveal there are a couple surreal moments that kind of took this over the top for me. I liked it a lot, and then when these surrealist sort of descent into weirddom happened, I really appreciated this a lot more than I expected to. But it's genuinely an engaging story. It is funny in quite a few of the scenes. You've got Dave Franco and Ed Harris both just playing these scuzzy, awful characters and delivering everything that they possibly could. Love this movie. If you want to check it out on VOD, 4K Blu-ray, it's all out there. A24 has their exclusive version of this, and it looks pretty fantastic.
I enjoyed it immensely. My wife and I watched it, and I think we both liked it a lot. And Kristen Stewart's great. I mean, look, if I have to defend Kristen Stewart to anyone at this point, she's more than Bella from Twilight. You fucks, come on! Just like Robert Pattinson's more than Edward Cullen. They're so good. Taylor Lautner is the one who maybe not deserves the hate, but he's the one who never escaped that gravity of Twilight. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything wrong with Taylor Lautner, frankly, but Love Lies Bleeding was great. I enjoyed it a fair amount. And yeah, Katie O'Brien's fucking yoked in that movie, dude. Holy moly. She might let her snap me over her leg like a fucking day-old breadstick from Olive Garden. My lord.
And she could.
Yeah, she could. Especially when she's big at the... Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, she's great. It's a great movie. And Ed Harris, I like Ed Harris's wig in the movie.
It's so bad.
It's great. It's so good. I don't know what you're talking about. Another A24 thing.
That's true.
Yeah. Speaking of A24, I guess not technically, but in a way, I guess, right?
It's a Shudder film.
Yeah, I mean it's 2/3 of the way to A24. Shall I mention my next one, which is going to make you
Please
so
do.
happy?
Yeah, I'll just mute myself and let you talk.
Yeah, I hate this. Oh man. So if you follow me on Letterboxd, where I log everything that I watch, okay? Because that's my duty as a film watcher, is that you know how I feel about the things that I watch whenever I watch them. So just so we're all clear, that's how I use Letterboxd, obviously. In a Violent Nature, if you follow me on Letterboxd, where I log everything I watch, In a Violent Nature was, I think it's probably my favorite movie of the year so far, which is not surprising for Ryan, because he was like, this is going to happen and I'm going to have to deal with it, which is
fucking guy.
This fucking guy. So In a Violent Nature, not a movie, again, similarly to Sasquatch Sunset in a whole host of ways. It is unlike anything I have ever seen. Ryan, I know as much as you didn't enjoy it, it is unlike anything either one of us have seen for the most part. Similarly,
I did play the Friday the 13th video game, so I have seen it.
Got his ass. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think if you want to see something that is unlike anything else you've ever seen in a cinematic presentation, yes, it is very video game in its presentation, but video games existed after film, so video games are influenced by film, obviously. In a Violent Nature is a third-person, over-the-shoulder view of a murderer in the vein of Jason and Michael Myers, who does not speak, who stalks campers and other people around a kind of woodland area for an hour and a half. And there are static shots like it's out of Resident Evil, which again, clearly it's very much inspired by the static camera stays in one spot and it's all taking place and we never move the camera. I mean, it's very clearly inspired by things that I really love, and I know you love too, but the problem is with the movie is it's just one of those things where, like Peter is alluding to in the comments, it divided people because it's divisive. I mean, it's not the kind of movie that's not meant to be. It is a movie without dialogue for the most part in terms of the main character. It's a movie where a lot of it is not necessarily explained. It's more or less just, if Midsommar is esoteric for you in terms of what it's getting at, In a Violent Nature is going to be even more, because it's expecting you as an audience member to just assume things and make connections about things going on. And again, not everybody's going to be into that. I resonated with it deeply because for me, for the most part, if I go into a movie like that, knowing it's like a vibe movie or like an ambient horror movie, which I think is probably what I would consider it. There was another movie that came out last year that you didn't resonate with, that I resonated with, that it is very much like, which is Skinamarink, which I think was my favorite horror movie from last year, which fucking makes you laugh too. I get it. Skinamarink was just as divisive for the horror community as In a Violent Nature is. It's going to be, just because based on what it is, more or less, just the idea being presented and the way it's being presented. Like, the idea is not divisive, but the vehicle through which it's being presented is. So In a Violent Nature, I think, is something that everybody who's a horror fan should check out. I think you're going to have an opinion about it that's going to be one or the other. I don't see a middle ground existing for this kind of movie, but that's okay. I think, again, it's like modern art, right? And I'm not saying that this movie is modern art, but I'm saying the way people react to modern art is either like, fuck it, I don't get it, man, or, oh my God, that's just so wild, and like, it's subversive. And look, I mean, again, I'm not trying to sell anybody on it. I'm just trying to say, if you've heard it's divisive, it deserves its divisiveness. But I think everybody who's into horror should give this movie a shot, see what they think, and go from there. But you know, it's a movie that, again, resonated with me deeply. But again, I also wanted to just watch a movie where I can go into the theater and kind of just be in it for an hour and a half. But I get it. I get just being like, I'm not into this. I get it. Like I said, I'm not sitting here and saying, like, I don't understand the hate. Like, no, I get it. Like, and it's probably deserved. But I think that there will be people that resonate with it, and there will be people that don't. And you and I agree on so much. Like, we agree on so much. The things that we don't agree on, it's obvious. And I think that those things are allowed to be divisive. Like I said, with Skinamarink and In a Violent Nature, kind of part and parcel. And I honestly think Sasquatch Sunset would be the same way. Like, people are going to watch it and be like, I don't get it. Like, it's not saying like you got to be in on the joke, but you got to be receptive to what the director's laying down.
I get that. And also, not mentioned, I will praise it for one thing, has one of the most legendary, memorable kills ever in a film. Literally.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I will say that, like, that does not carry the film alone, obviously.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. And I think in a lot of ways it's almost unfair that the kill is so good because the movie for most people is never going to get back up to that moment. But yeah, I think for me, if you're into horror movies, go for it. It's going to be on Shudder here pretty soon. I'm going to buy it on physical media, which I think speaks volumes. Like, I own Skinamarink on Blu-ray. That's how much I liked it. On Steelbook even. Ryan, you'd be proud of me. I own a Steelbook. I know.
Even though it's a movie I hate.
I know. Hey. But see, that's what makes you someone who I respect as a film critic and film analyst. Is like, you're like, I don't like it, but I appreciate that you like it. You know, Jesus Christ. Well, so much of the divisiveness comes from people just being unable to talk about something and being like, yeah, I like it and you don't. Okay.
Speaking of the divisiveness.
Speaking of that, yeah.
That Chris and I don't normally do on our show is just straight rail a movie that we don't like. But one thing that we're going to do on these is bring up a film that we suggest skipping. The first one is probably not a surprise to a lot of people, but I'm going to put it in a context that is different than a lot of the stupid, awful discourse out there. I finally caught up with the only Marvel film that I had not seen, and that was last year's The Marvels. I definitely recommend everybody skip this movie. I watched Captain Marvel, which I liked quite a bit. I thought it was a very good, fun 90s throwback, really good introduction to Brie Larson, loved the younger Sam Jackson energy. It was all good. I liked all of that. However, The Marvels is a broke down Power Rangers episode that deserves literally no attention from anybody. This movie is so poorly put together. A absolute mess in what Marvel has turned into. I have absolutely lost almost all of my interest in watching anything else from them moving forward. If Deadpool and Wolverine is not as like this amazing pop culture moment that they're alluding for it to be, I'm going to be massively disappointed. And it's going to be a big deal. But the Marvels is not a good movie, and I really wanted it to be. I really like the idea of these three female characters coming together and, changing things in what was a very struggling universe at the time. But it just doesn't work. The effects are bad, which is a continuation of what they've been doing. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, whatever, was awful. It was like 94% green screen, done poorly even. And this movie is just...
That's not even mentioning Jonathan Majors.
Right. It's really bad that we don't even get like interesting backdrops. It is a waste of time and energy compared to what they've built into this franchise for the last, God, we're going on almost 20 years at this point since Iron Man. And yet here we are. I think after, a couple movies in phase 4 were okay, but most of them were really bad. And the future's looking mighty bleak for the MCU. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Yep. The less said about the MCU, the better. Speaking of me being divisive, good Lord. Yep. Look, if you listen to the episode I did with the projection booth, the crossover we did last month about it, you already know my feelings, but I'm going to bring up another 2024 movie that is completely worth the skip, and boy, it feels like a skip even more after the last 24 hours. Civil War by Alex Garland. Oh my God. Just the biggest nothing burger of a fucking movie. The trailer made it look like it was going to be one thing. The people who went into the movie thinking was going to be that thing and it wasn't were disappointed. That was me and you, because the trailer promised one thing and it delivered on something else entirely. And the movie I was expecting was one that was actually going to be envelope pushing and upsetting and genuinely off-putting, because Alex Garland knows how to do that. And instead of it being a movie about America at civil war with itself, it's a movie about photojournalists, which again, in 2024, do we need a movie about photojournalism? Is that a thing that is resonating with people? Because if you're making a movie about America at civil war with itself, that might fucking resonate with people. Duh. So why? It was a bait and switch. It was the biggest bait and switch of a movie I've seen in a very long time. It, I think, for me, is a massive disappointment on A24's part of even having anything to do with the movie. The fact that it's their most expensive movie is kind of an embarrassment because I don't know where that went. I don't know what they spent that on because watching the movie, yeah, it looks nice. It's a fucking
lots of CGI.
It's a movie made in 2024. Saying it looks nice is not a fucking high bar to cross anymore. The Mandalorian looks nice. It's a fucking TV show.
As we just talked about the MCU failing to look nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you throw CGI at the fucking screen and I don't think I'm expected to give a shit is my point. Because again, like anybody can do that at this point, even myself theoretically at home with DaVinci Resolve or any other post-pro could do that. They didn't do it very well in Civil War, and it didn't add anything to an already floundering story about photojournalism wrapped around a story about America at Civil War with itself, which is an interesting idea. That's a divisive film. This is a divisive film for a completely different reason. The reason being it's not a film worth watching, and there are people defending it like it's somehow some great like musing on the way the world is now. It's like it has nothing to do with anything. It's a waste of time. Is what it is. Like a genuine waste of time. It was a waste of everybody's time who made it. It's disappointing that it's Alex Garland's last directorial film, at least by his own proclamation. If that ends up being the case, Steven Soderbergh retired how many times now? I wouldn't be surprised if Alex Garland ends up directing something else. Alex Garland directed and wrote one of my favorite movies with Annihilation. So I like him. I actually like Men a fair amount. I'm not a huge fan of Ex Machina, but Annihilation and Men are both pretty great. This is Alex Garland's worst movie. I think it might be one of the worst things A24 has ever put their name on. A studio and production house, a production house that I have immense respect for now, having spent the last month watching a ton of A24 stuff. It's the worst thing that they've made. Yeah, it is because it's the most expensive thing that they've put here. $25 million. For what is my point? Give that to Ari Aster and let him go buck fucking wild. Don't give it to this. It's just, and if you're going to give it to this, better be worth it. Better be worth. That's all I'm saying.
So I'm not going to go too much into detail on my feelings. I liked it slightly more than you, but I do want to ask one question to put a button on the end of this. If they had marketed this as a photojournalism story and didn't lean heavily into the war story, would you have enjoyed it more, you think?
I don't think I would have even gone and seen it.
Nobody would have, but if you had like casually caught that trailer and somebody asked you to do an episode on it and you had to watch it, do you think you would have enjoyed it more?
No, because because what they're talking about in the movie is they're not even having a discussion in an interesting way. It's not what it's about. It's the way that they're having the discussion more than anything else. Like, yes, it's photojournalism, but I mean, the photojournalism of it all is not the problem. It's the way that they're having the conversation. They have nothing to add. They don't add anything. They add nothing. They add nothing to the conversation that hasn't already been said by people who are much more talented than Alex Garland is appearing to be in the movie that Civil War is being put forth as. And it was $50 million. It wasn't $25 million. So oops,
I thought it was more than that.
Twice as bad.
So Hunter just alluded to an interview with Alex Garland on The Big Picture. Definitely want to check that out. But now we're going to move into our next segment, which is going to be a fairly quick segment each week. Chris and I are not each week, each time we do this, each month. We're going to just give 3 back-to-back recommendations. Mine are going to be focused on physical media in case you are a Film Foundation watcher / listener and are not focused on physical media. Just, hey, you might be interested in it. And then Chris is going to explain his, but I'm going to go in order of like from popular to more and more obscure this month. And first one, John Waters directed Crybaby with Johnny Depp, and that just got a 4K release from Kino Lorber. And not only did this come out in a beautiful 4K, got all kinds of new special features. We got an audio commentary with John Waters on here that's pretty nice. We got some featurettes. We got some new interviews. There is a lot on here. This is one of their more loaded discs, and I think that you could do a lot worse than buying this for like $23 or whatever that it's going for. That's a pretty great deal.
Support John Waters too. Come on.
Yeah, it's John fucking Waters. Another one that I got in very recently, even though it's been out for a few months. One of the better looking 4Ks from this year that I've really appreciated for an underseen film. For sure. Everybody, when you think of Bob Clark, you think of Christmas films, whether that be happy Christmas films or horrific Christmas films. I'm going to recommend Death Dream as maybe his actual best film that people don't talk about. This one is surrounding stuff with the Vietnam War and it's a really well-made film. Looks great on this 4K. Lots of special features on here, especially because they've got the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc. There's new audio commentary with Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson on here, and then an interview with the actor Gary Swanson. Everything else is just a compilation of all the special features they've done for it, and it is a solid release. And I feel like most people have never seen it, so highly recommend it. And then I got to shout out the company Cape Light Pictures. This is a company based out of Germany, and they generally make media books. And the U.S. doesn't get many media books for some reason. I don't know why they're not popular here with any of the U.S. companies, but U.S. consumers seem to like them. And one of the films that they've done recently is one that had been kind of difficult to see, and that is Hansel and Gretel. First off, great art on this media book. So if you don't know what a media book is, it has the film on the inside, but also an actual book attached too. There used to be a bunch of DVDs that did this, but these media books are just it's a nice like treat to see them all put together in a package like this. Cape Light does really good work for the most part, and they've got some special features. They've got films that are hard to see. This is a Canon film, so it's one that if you're into the Canon stuff, you might like. This is some scenes from it, if you can see the visuals here, and it's a film that most people have probably never seen, and I'm so glad that they did it because nobody else was going to put it out. And thanks to Cape Light, we've got a solid release of it, and I appreciate them so much. What about you, sir? What are you going to talk about today?
So I'm allowed to just talk about whatever I want, which is fun. I don't get to do that very often. Literally. I mean, I do, but I don't, but I do. In terms of non-movie things. So a couple things that I'm going to suggest, and they're from all over the place. So literally one is a movie adjacent thing, one is a video game, and one is a TV show that is trying to redeem the soiled legacy of the original show. So my first recommendation is, if you are on the fence, if you have not been interested or engaged with it because of the way the first show ended, which is completely justified because, dear God in heaven, we all know if you watched it that it ended poorly, and I don't think anyone can even defend it at this point. House of the Dragon is good. The second season is off to a great start. The first season was pretty goddamn good as well. I know that the first season's a little kind of narratively disjointed because it was like 2 shows in one season with the young cast and the old cast and a lot of time jumps. That doesn't seem to be the case in the new season. It seems to be playing it chronologically straight, which is fun so far. But House of the Dragon's great. It has great actors. I mean, my God, Emma Darcy, oh my God, Olivia Colman, everybody. I mean, Rhys Ifans as one of the leads of your show. Like, I love Rhys Ifans in everything. Rhys Ifans is a character actor that I have an immense amount of love for, from The Replacements, from Little Nicky. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, was that Paul Bettany that's in A Knight's Tale, or is that Rhys Ifans? Pretty sure it's Rhys Ifans.
It's been a while for me.
Rhys Ifans, I mean, again, like, I don't necessarily consider him like a massive dramatic actor, but in House of the Dragon, every scene that he's in, he runs away with it. He's really good. The show's really good. It's starting to redeem the bad taste that was left in the mouth by everybody that saw the first run of the show, which was admittedly really poor. So House of the Dragon, definitely worth checking out. I kind of alluded to it a little bit before that I've been watching a lot more A24 stuff. So A24 movies tend to be, sometimes they can be a little bit esoteric, a little bit out there. So if you've got 6.5 hours to spare, which, I'm not saying everybody does, but if you are into film and you want to have a movie explained to you and you want a deep dive on a film, if you are a fan of Midsommar, which I have become a massive fan in the last month of the film. I had not seen it until recently. Like I said, I log everything that I watch on Letterboxd, so if you go on there, you can see that. I just recently watched it for the first time. I haven't logged every time I've watched it since, so at this point it'd probably be like 7 or 8 times. I've literally watched it so many times in the last like month and a half. But Midsommar, The Complete Guide, everything explained by Novum on YouTube. It is a literal 6 hour and 55 minute long video. The link is now in our comments if you would like to check it out right now. I mean, I wouldn't, because you'll be watching until 8 o'clock at night tonight, which would be fucking wild. But it is a in-depth in a way that I could only hope to do at some point in my life. I mean, we've done on the Culture Cast, we did like an 8-hour long episode on Saw, but we covered every single Saw film. We had interviews with people from the first, 7 movies at the time, or 6 movies, whatever it was, before they made more. So I've never done anything like this, at least in a video format, but 7 hours in depth about Midsommar. This gentleman, Novum, has also done a video on Hereditary that's 4.5 hours long. He did one on The Green Knight, which is like 2 hours long. It's a great way to appreciate further a movie that, for a lot of people, on the surface, it's a great movie, but if you actually spend the time to see where and why and how and the influences and the references that are being made, like to see exactly what they're getting at and where they're coming from, I think gave me a whole new appreciation for the movie and allowed me to appreciate Ari Aster as a filmmaker more. I can't help but, like I said, sing the praises of someone who's making great YouTube content that I, like I said, have engaged with pretty frequently now in the last month and a half. And then on top of those 2 suggestions, again, stuff I really don't get to talk about in a audio setting, is video games. I play a fair amount of video games. It's kind of one of the ways that I kill time when I'm not doing work or spending time with my wife. I game with my friends. And speaking of movies and actors being involved in movies, Crime Boss Rockay City just came out for Steam. It's been on the Epic Games Store since last year. It just came out on Steam like literally last week. It features Danny Trejo, Michael Madsen, Chuck Norris, Michael Rooker, Danny Glover, Kim Basinger, and Vanilla Ice as characters in the game. They show up, their avatars are in the game, their voices are in the game. It is a heisting game like Payday, but with a 90s kind of Miami vibe to it. It's, if you liked Vice City, but you wanted 90s version of that, it's kind of like that. It's a heisting game, so if you're into running around and shooting SWAT that's coming to stop you from stealing bags of money or cocaine while Danny Trejo is screaming in your ear, and you want to do it with your 3 best friends, it's a great way to spend an hour. It's like $15 right now on Steam. It's the Steam summer sale as well for all you gamers out there. You know, if you know, you know, your credit card is currently being taken out to the woodshed. But I mean, the movie connection obviously is why I wanted to mention it, because Danny Glover, Danny Glover, Danny Trejo, Michael Rooker. I mean, these are people that everybody, in terms of like character actors, we all love. I mean, and Michael Madsen, I mean, they all have massive, massive followings, and they're in this game for a reason because they all bring the same energy. If you're not into playing games, go check out videos of it on YouTube. You can hear all the crazy one-liners that Michael Rooker is doing and Danny Trejo is doing, but it's a lot of fun. And like I said, if you're into movies and you're into video games, it's kind of a nice little intersection there. So
nice.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
It is. It's very fun.
All right. We are into our last segment of what the show is going to be. And this is going to be an interesting one because every single month, one of us, we're going to take turns. One of us is going to surprise the other one with the topic that we're going to do a top 10 ranking for, back and forth. When one of us chooses the topic, the other person gets to provide the number 1. So today, Chris is going to be giving me a topic that I know nothing about. He's not giving me any hints, don't know anything about what's coming, and he has to give the first answer. So he will give number 10. I will do the odd numbers all the way up to number 1. We'll go back and forth, have a very short discussion about them. But the thing to make it interesting, we both have one block. We can take one of the options on this list and say, nope, it's not going to be on the list, but you can only use it once. And if you block something, it can't go up higher on the list. You can't use it on the list. It can't be on the list at all. So Chris is going to tell me the topic, and then he will provide us with his number 10 pick. But this is just a fun way to discuss literally almost anything. We could talk about a genre of film. We could talk about an actor. We could talk about chain restaurants. We could talk about who makes the best burgers. We could talk about months of the year. Who cares? It's just an interesting random thing to throw in here, and it'll be a good time. Chris, what are you going to torment me with today?
So you're gonna love this. So you said we don't know what the topic is, right? You're like, well, we may not know it. Who knows? We're just gonna come off the cuff here. So this is a top 10 list, or is it ranking of 10 list, right? Ranking 10 things. Let's do this. Because again, let's just get this out of the way now so we don't have to do it again in the future. Though I guess we might have to, given if any more given how many more movies are going to undoubtedly get released at this point, let's do a ranking of the bottom 10 Marvel movies. Marvel Cinematic Universe movies.
Wow. Okay, so
not the top 10.
The number one will be the worst one?
The number one will be the worst movie, period. And you get to provide that here.
Wow. All right.
I know. There's a lot. There is a lot, but I'm going to start it out, and you're going to love this, because this is how we start here. I'm going to start this one out strong, and I'm going to say that number 10 is Thor: The Dark World, which at some point would have been much closer to the bottom than it is now. But for me, Thor: The Dark World, I think, is it's near the bottom still. Even like going on almost, like, what are we, like 15 years removed now from it having been out, right? Like it came out, I think, in 2013. Yeah. So yeah, wow, 11 years. Jeez. Yeah, it's still pretty bad. I mean, I've rewatched it recently. Christopher Eccleston is unfortunately wasted, which is a shame because Christopher Eccleston is amazing as an actor. It was before Taika Waititi came into the franchise and decided to give it that punch up of New Zealand humor it needed, apparently. I mean, it did. I mean, clearly it needed somebody to have something unique to say with the franchise as opposed to doing fake Game of Thrones, which is what Thor: The Dark World felt like, and then whatever Kenneth Branagh was saddled with the first Thor movie. But yeah, Thor: The Dark World is my answer for, I guess, 10.
I do think this is too low on this list. This would definitely be probably number 5 or 6 for me, but I can't block it and put it higher, so I'm going to have to let it
You sure you don't want to?
This absolutely deserves to be in the bottom 10. This movie is not good. So not good.
It's really not good. Like...
But I also think it's going to provide a hilarious 1-2 punch, because at number 9, I'm going to put in Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Taika Waititi comes in and gives us Thor Ragnarok, which everybody loved, and thought that it was a great, great introduction to Taika's humor into the MCU. And then everybody's all on board to get another Taika Thor film, and Thor: Love and Thunder is complete garbage.
Wow. That's like the worst thing I've ever heard you say about a movie.
This movie is so bad for many reasons, but primarily I'm going to harp on one thing. When you have a character that you are calling the God Butcher and you don't show him killing anybody in the entire film, how, like, what is the point? Like,
even Ronan kills people in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is meant to be literally one of the most dangerous people in the entire comic book based universe that you're deriving this from. And he literally accidentally kills one person in the beginning, and that's it.
Cool.
That's it. This movie is not good. I think they leaned too much into the Taika Waititi humor, and because of that, most of it fails, and it just did not come together. This was something that I was vastly disappointed in.
Is the internet turned on Taika Waititi? Is that what's going on?
It definitely has, yes.
Yeah. Well, is it because he made that transphobic soccer movie? Is that why?
Yes, that's a part of it, yes.
Man, shouldn't do that. Just saying.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, bisexual flag, non-binary person here saying it, but, maybe I'm fucking biased. Maybe don't be a dick. You don't have to add it to your movie just cuz. What the fuck? Speaking of Taika Waititi, no, I'm just kidding. No, I would never put Thor Ragnarok in. I will say, though, Thor Ragnarok on repeat viewings doesn't necessarily stand up as well as it did the first time I saw it. I think Thor Ragnarok is a movie that I enjoyed it the first time I saw it a lot more than every subsequent time, primarily because it's just different from what you just mentioned, or what I mentioned and what we've kind of alluded to, which is Thor: The Dark World and Thor are both pretty bad movies. And then this one kind of comes in and undoes what that third one did. But again, the third one, maybe that was a fluke. Maybe at this point. I mean, again.
Very well could be an anomaly.
Yeah. And again, I don't feel one way or another about Taika Waititi either. Just, hey, maybe you don't need to keep making these movies. I don't know. Go do something else. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. For me, Taika Waititi's just kind of diminishing returns now. What we do in the shadows is great, but his involvement is zero. Right. Yeah.
All right. We're on to your number 8.
Yeah. So my number 8, again, I don't think that this is, I don't think this is a surprise, really. Captain Marvel, just Brie Larson. What's the deal, Brie? Like, did you begrudgingly take this role? I don't understand what her energy is surrounding Captain Marvel, because it doesn't, and it never has seemed like she has any interest in playing the role of the character. And then she seems annoyed that she's a part of a franchise where the people have feelings about it one way or another. Like, yeah, this franchise, this cinematic universe exists, but the comic books have existed for so much longer that while I appreciate one might understand that, yeah, these people are nerds and we shouldn't listen to them, people have been reading comic books with Captain Marvel for a very long time. And right. Brie Larson's energy just, I don't know, Brie Larson's energy just never really made sense with the Captain Marvel character. And then the Captain Marvel movie was fine, but I think it was a poor first entry if you're trying to get us to care about a character. Because by the end of that movie, I was like, okay, I guess. Like, I'm not super invested in this character, and they're really trying to get us invested in Captain Marvel, because when Captain Marvel came out, that was pre-Endgame. So, like, that was like, oh, we need to understand why Captain Marvel is going to be a big deal in Endgame. And then in Endgame, she was like a nothing burger on top of everything else. Like, I don't know, a Hail Mary character being introduced at the 13th hour to try and justify them showing up for 2 seconds in Endgame. I don't know. Endgame suffers because Captain Marvel's involvement, where it's like, oh, remember Captain Marvel? It's like, no. It's just like maybe another thing we might mention, being like, where were they this whole time? Who could that be in reference to? I wonder. We'll find out soon. Maybe you'll pick that movie. I don't know. What do you think about this pick? Is this too high? Too low?
Maybe you will talk about it soon, because I'm blocking this. This does not deserve to be in the bottom 10. There are so many worse films in the
really
universe. Oh, yes.
So wait, do I have to replace this one then?
You have to replace it.
Okay, so the Eternals then. You're right. You're right, the Eternals. There you go. You got what you wanted, apparently. You might be talking about it in 2 fucking seconds.
Before, I will say, I already talked about Captain Marvel once earlier on the show, but the movie, it's just, again, it's one of those, like, it's a good vibe movie for me. It's the 90s was fun, and the way that they bring Sam Jackson back into a young Sam Jackson, I think it worked quite well. I didn't hate Brie Larson in this role. Yes, she was a nothing burger in Endgame, but this movie was her movie, and I think it worked. Did it work, top half of the MCU? No, but does it deserve bottom 10? Not at all.
Interesting. Yeah, I have, like, in terms of Brie Larson as an actress, I have no opinion, but I know other people have lots of opinions. Like, and their opinions are not invalid, is my point. Like, I think maybe they're screaming a little too loudly, but I don't think just because someone's been a fan of something doesn't invalidate their opinion or make it, oh, you're a sweaty nerd on the internet. Like, no, that's just someone who really likes something, and why you're, like, making them mad intentionally. Rian Johnson is kind of weird to me, but what do I know? Yeah, block it. Look, the Eternals was just kind of boring. That's the worst thing and the best thing that you can say about it. Like, it was inoffensively bad in terms of just, like, it was a boring movie. It was well made. It came out during COVID. Like, there are other movies that came out during COVID that weren't bad, that were MCU movies. This one just happens to be one of the kind of forgettable ones. It's so forgettable. The characters in the movie were forgotten in Endgame. They killed a Celestial in Eternals. Like, Thanos was not a Celestial. Thanos was just a guy. And the Eternals were just like, we'll just let that happen. Captain Marvel set the stage for the Eternals to make the ultimate mistake. Like, Captain Marvel, they, like, wiggled Captain Marvel into Endgame at the last second. The Eternals, there was like, what excuse is there?
Right.
None. Multiverse, that's the excuse now. Really, I mean, it really is.
And I think we're going to be talking about that a lot in the rest of this list.
I was about to say, there are some movies here that might even have that in the title, even.
Oh, God. I hope not. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah. So what's your next one?
Well, first, the Eternals, I do want to point out one major thing. We talked earlier about how bad the CGI is in a lot of these. The Eternals, it's a pretty movie. I think it was well done. And I really like Don Lee in this, and I really like Kumail Nanjiani. But everything else, boring as beyond belief.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it was a Chloe Zhao movie too, because Nomadland is a great movie.
My next one might be the one that pisses some people off, although I think most people agree. My number 7, which I probably could have waited to put this up at number 5, is The Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Wow. I'm half tempted to block your ass on this one just to be a fucking troll, but I'll let it slide.
The big thing is this movie sucks.
Wow. Jesus.
I don't like the nonsensical way that the MCU started fairly small stakes with a lot of the Phase 1 films. And then Avenger Age of Ultron, they're literally lifting a fucking city off of the earth and seeing what might happen, and the world hangs in your balance. And so much of this just gets wasted through this random overpowered AI, essentially. And it's a very tired story. The way that they flesh out some of the characters in this is, I think, the first one that they don't do well. Prior to this, they had mostly done pretty good with keeping their characters grounded in a sense of reality, in a heightened reality, of course, through this fantastical way that we're building them. But I also feel like they kind of wasted James Spader. I love him as an actor, and to have his voice just be attached to this random robot, it did not do well for me. But this movie, just compared to everything that came before it, this was the first time I was actually disappointed with an MCU film.
Yeah, I'll allow it. Yeah, I think this is. I'm surprised that you didn't harp on the one thing that I feel like needs to be harped on, which is they just like stuffed the movie with every like plot thread necessary to pick up in every other movie moving forward, and then they introduce things that they don't even have anything to do with. Like there's that one shot of like all the MCU characters like dead that goes nowhere, and it's like, why is this being given time? This doesn't do any, like, so much of Age of Ultron feels like wasted space, right? Ultimately. And I mean, again, like wasted space may be a good way of describing the next couple movies, but Age of Ultron was disappointing.
And that's, you'll notice Thor: The Dark World came out before Age of Ultron, and I said this is the first one that disappointed me. I didn't love the first Thor. I think it's better in hindsight now, but it wasn't one that I was like, oh man, Thor: The Dark World is going to be a great movie. It was not something I expected to be great. This one, the first Avengers movie came out, and it was like, oh wow, these can actually be really great when they team together, and then they just fell on their face.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So this is my number 6, right?
Number 6.
So, I mean, 6. So, I've got 2 more picks after this one. Okay. Right. So I have effectively, this is my like top 3rd worst movie, right? Effectively. I sit here and I wonder if the MCU is going to be a thing 10 years from now because of how bad some of the recent stuff has been, right? I mean, you've alluded to it already with Phase 4 and Phase 5 being not great, right? Like legit Phase 5 is kind of to the point now where we're just like, oh man, like we're putting all of our eggs into the basket of Deadpool and Wolverine, which we can't even mention on this list because technically they're not MCU movies, but I guess they are now.
The third one supposedly is.
No, but I mean Deadpool 1 and 2 are technically MCU movies.
Kind of.
Same with Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. I'm not advocating that there are going to be answers here, obviously, because they're not. I'm more talking to the idea of like, now they've done the thing where it's like everything is the thing now, which is the inverse of the Star Wars problem. Like Star Wars, like only this, and this. Still a lot of things, but Marvel, it's like, no, everything is the thing now. It's like, Jesus Christ, guys. Like, come on. Not everything cannot be the thing.
Yep.
However, I'm saying all this because, again, like, I think we tend to forget early on that there were MCU movies that weren't great because like now, again, like there was such a period of time where they were so good that now it's like, oh shit, they're bad for the first time. No, they've been bad. They've been bad before. And that's where my answer comes in. Iron Man 2 is really bad. Like it's, and you know why it's bad? Because it has the same problem that Age of Ultron does. It is just, it spreads itself way too thin. And it has way too much going on. It also has Elon Musk in it, which doesn't help. But it has Mickey Rourke, who's a great actor, being criminally underutilized and fucking wasted. But the real problem, the real sad state of affairs, the real note and point that I want to hammer home is it wastes fucking Sam Rockwell. Of all people, of all the people to waste, Sam Rockwell. And this is a guy who at the time hadn't won an Oscar yet, was just known as like Sam Rockwell, the character actor. I mean, his visibility has been elevated a lot since, obviously, for a whole host of reasons. But Iron Man 2 for me is just a disappointment all the way around because remember how good first Iron Man was? I do. Iron Man 2 is like really bad. Even it's bad on its own, and then it's even worse in comparison to Iron Man 1, which came out, like 3 years earlier, 2 years earlier. Yeah, Iron Man 2 is not a great entry into your burgeoning MCU. It made a fuck ton of money, but it is a bad movie, and I don't think people really remember how kind of critically panned it was at the time. It was not well received when it came out. I remember watching it and thinking that movie was not good, and that was in 2010 when it came out. It's 14 years later, and I think it's been given kind of a pass, given how bad things have gotten, given the sad state of things.
I don't fully agree, but I have nothing to do with it. I do think this should not be in the bottom 10.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is better than most of the dreck we've gotten at the bottom of the list of the MCU. But yeah,
is this where it's all just trash from here on out?
Kinda. Well, I don't know how you feel about the next one I'm going to say, which is one of the earlier films too.
So see, but that's what I mean. Like, I didn't want to load it up with just old movies or new movies because that's unfair. Because the new stuff's not great, but also, like, most new things aren't good either. Like, it's not just an MCU thing. Like, a lot of big Hollywood blockbusters, CGI things are just not great because we're exhausted by the amount of CGI that's being used. And that's an industry thing right now. Like,
right. So this one, a lot of people don't even truly look at it as an MCU film because of the character being replaced.
No, I'm blocking this one. Sorry. You're not even going to get to say the name of the movie, bro.
I have to say the name.
I know, but I am blocking this one because
Tell them what it is and how you feel about it.
No, go for it. I want to hear you first. Seriously, because I got to say why I picked it. So go for it. Like, I picked my thing and then you vetoed it. So go for it. You deserve to have an opportunity to say it for sure.
I just don't like the way they put the Incredible Hulk together. It doesn't feel right when you and honestly, if you look at it as a standalone, like the first Hulk film, it's better if it's not a part of the MCU. But literally as a part of the MCU, it is such an odd outlier, especially because it was recast, that I don't like it nearly as much as many of the others. Does it deserve bottom 5? Probably not. If I had all the numbers, it probably would have been like 8 or 7 maybe.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't. It's not up there for me.
So I'm going to veto this one because I actually think that Iron Man and Hulk coming out that summer, I liked Hulk more than I liked Iron Man when I saw it, which is fucked up. I like the Hulk more as a character. Like, I think the Hulk has been given short shrift big time as a character. But I think that's also because the rights are with Universal and they don't want to spend the time and effort to... I get it. Like, Spider-Man's worth it, okay? But Incredible Hulk, based on historical evidence, would lead me to believe that probably not worth money to make a Hulk movie again. And Mark Ruffalo's like, man, I don't really want to. He's doing his best John C. Reilly impersonation. But yeah, he's not interested. They're not interested. But yeah, I'm going to block this one because I agree with you. It doesn't deserve to be down here, and therefore it won't be.
Well, then on that note, my replacement at number 5 is not because it is led by women at all, but Black Widow deserves to be at number 5 because so many people, when looking back at the MCU, go, oh, wait, there was a Black Widow film?
Right.
And never remember a damn thing about it because this movie is weird. Like, it's not even a great movie. I will say, I adore Florence Pugh. I wanted this to be great. It's not. It's not very good. It's a disjointed storyline. It's supposedly still going to have an effect on some things, especially because of
David Harbour's in Thunderbolts.
David Harbour's character, but just not for me. I like the setting of this. I think they could have done much better. The end, and I think it's the post-credit scene where they start to lean on Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, is really weird. But this is a movie that more so than being bad, it's just overlooked because there's nothing remarkable about it whatsoever.
And it came out during COVID, and like three-quarters of the movie was pre-Viz before they even cast anybody. Like, yeah, Black Widow deserves to be down here more than Incredible Hulk does, but I'm not sure Black Widow deserves to be down here either, really. Like, well, I don't know, probably. I mean, again, like, boy, the next thing that I pick is going to be really funny. Are you ready for like a real laugh out loud moment, a real knee slapper? So my second worst is Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
You know, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I don't like this.
I know you don't, but I know that there are people out there that are like pearl clutching right now because that choice right there is like sacrilege to some MCU people, given how big of a deal those Guardians of the Galaxy, especially the first one and the third one, are. But Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a bad movie. It wastes Kurt Russell, who is an amazing actor. It has this weird, like, my daddy didn't love me story, so it's like, the familial drama is wasted because the Guardians of the Galaxy is about a found family, and then the second movie's like, but what if your found family interacted with your real family? And it's like, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm good. So, I don't know. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, not a movie that I resonate with. I remember really disliking it when I saw it in theaters. Did an episode on it on the Culture Cast. My feelings were well known then. They're well known now. I dislike Guardians of the Galaxy 2 immensely. I think it might even be James Gunn's worst movie. Straight up, which we just did an episode on Film Foundations that will be coming out 8 years from now, effectively. And, James Gunn has made very few films, so he hasn't made a whole lot of movies. So this being his worst movie, not really that big of a deal because he hasn't made enough movies to really have like a whole host of things. But Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a real bummer of a movie.
The biggest thing, you waste Kurt Russell, you're on my shit list.
And then Michael Rooker doesn't come back for the third one. So, because of what happens in the second one. Right? Like Michael Rooker ends up, I mean, I guess at this point, Michael Rooker dies, guys. Like, okay, we've all seen Guardians of the Galaxy at this point. So he wasn't in the trailers for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So where was he at? Taking a tea break. Who knows?
Yeah.
You wouldn't block this one if you had a veto, right?
No, not at all. If I was making my own list, would it have been this low? Probably not. But it
gotta get a little spicy here. Gotta get a little spicy.
It would have been in the bottom 10 for sure.
Yeah.
All right. This is where I feel like
rubber meets the road, folks.
Obvious answers here, although I don't know how you feel about one of them, but it doesn't matter because neither one of us have a block left.
That's true. That's true. We do not.
So I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers by giving the sequel here some shit and say that my pick at number 3 is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, interesting.
Period. That's it. It's not the worst in the franchise, and hopefully we hear about that one later. In fact, I can guarantee you we will. But again, this is another one where I feel like the stakes got too big for their britches, basically, and they tried to capture the magic of the first one, and it just didn't work. Adding in, is the character's name Hope or whatever her name is?
Hope Van Dyne.
She didn't give the chemistry that you should have had in this film, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't have what made the first one special. And the first one was special primarily because they focused a lot on the side characters of Michael Pena and all these people that are essentially making the first Ant-Man movie just a heist movie, but done with really fun things. Like the train fight was great in the first movie. The second movie, we don't get enough of that. It's just kind of a waste. And I think they could have done so much better. Obviously, I know that you needed to make something out of the Wasp character, but other than casting the wrong person, you just don't give her anything interesting to do.
Yeah. Boy, that's yeah. It's real bad. It's real bad. Right, like, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it when I've watched it, but I'm not going to sit here and defend it. Like, it's, man. Yeah, here's the question, though. If I say Ant-Man Quantumania, what do you say?
You're going to put me in a bad situation if you do that.
I know. Because
that has to be number one for me.
But it kind of has to be number one for me, too, is the problem. Like, it's like so... Because I'm like looking at the list and I'm thinking to myself, like, there is one other answer here, and I think I'm going to say it just so I don't fuck you over completely. But I don't think it's necessarily actually... No, it is. And it's because of where it ends up pushing everything now. And I think it's the promise of what it was and you know what I'm saying. Because we're essentially saying, like, we're saying the same two movies, more or less, for the same reason that they're both kind of bad. So, yeah, probably this is a real bummer that I got to say it and I got to do it. And man, it pains me. It pains me because he's such a good director and I love the things that he's directed and I love the movies that he's made. But for me, if I were to take a step back and say, of all the Marvel movies that have come out, this is the most disappointing for me. This is the worst one by my approximation. Because again, the promise of what it was is never made good at all. And I know he can make a good Marvel movie because he's done it 3 times, 2 times maybe. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was such a fucking shame. And it was like, it's not a bad movie per se, but the multiverse does nothing. They go nowhere with it. There's like one good scene in the movie, and it's like such a good scene that you wish the whole movie had just been that. and not anything else. Benedict Cumberbatch kind of is like sleepwalking through the role. He's not really doing much. The movie feels like the kind of movie where somebody took over a third of the way through, because that is what happened. It was literally a director came in and then another director came in and took the reins over, that guy being Sam Raimi, which, I mean, look, I wanted to like it. I love Bruce Campbell, who does in Pizza Papa fucking pizza balls in the multiverse. Like, it's got to be an Eric Andre reference if it's anything. But I really don't understand why the movie didn't do more with the multiverse of it all. Because for me, that's the big disappointment. And also, I pick it here because the multiverse stuff is ruining the MCU. Like, it's literally ruining the MCU. Maybe it's not because of the multiverse stuff, but because of the way it's being handled by the MCU and the
right.
crutch that it's being turned into by the MCU and the kind of horse shit that they're doing now, where it's like everything is MCU now. It's like Multiverse of Madness set the tone in a way that, like, oh, John Krasinski is Mr. Fantastic. Like, what? Charles Xavier is in it. What? Like, all these things are really cool, but then they're executed so poorly that it's like, I kind of wish you hadn't done any of this, because it was a better idea in my mind when I was envisioning it as something fun, and now it's just kind of boring. And there's one good scene in that entire movie. It's when Scarlet Witch fights the alternate universe Avengers, as one would call it. That's the best part of the whole movie. But it's the best part because those guys are fucking dum-dums, apparently. And it was funny to get to see them get clowned on. But like, one scene in a movie does not make a good movie, and then everything else with the multiverse of it all just, yeah. As disappointing. It was the first movie I saw back from COVID, too. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, this wasn't worth coming out of hiding for.
So earlier, when we were doing this, you had said, and one of them has multiverse in the name, and I said, I hope it's not on the list. I'm glad you saw through that. Yeah, this absolutely deserves to be here for multiple reasons, primarily because of the disappointment factor. Like, you announced that Sam Raimi, who is literally the king of comic book films for making what is known as literally the best one ever, comes back for this, and genre fans rejoice, and MCU fans rejoice, and Spider-Man fans rejoice, and just straight Raimi fans rejoice. All of that is great. And the third act of this, I actually think, is better than the fighting the phony Avengers scene. I really like when they start to lean into the horror aspect, but it is an awful movie.
The horror stuff felt too little too late for me. It felt too little.
Oh, it was.
Too late.
Yeah, they couldn't save it at that point. But really, the thing that really makes this poor is that it's like WandaVision Part 2. This isn't really a Doctor Strange film. This is WandaVision Part 2. And with WandaVision leading into this, and you get the whole multiverse thing breaking open, and that's now the basis of everything, that is the day that the MCU died. And I'm not like a huge MCU fan even. Like, I've seen all of them at least twice, I think. But that doesn't mean that I'm like one of these diehard things that'll see them in opening day or anything like that. But
not anymore, anyways.
Even at the height of like when I was actually enjoying them, I wouldn't even say I was a huge fan, really. But at this point, you have ruined what was such an interesting saga, at least. And the multiverse was the worst thing that has happened. And to put it in the title of this film was to doom it. And it is now our doom to live. Yeah,
the promise of the film is never made good on. And boy, don't promise a multiverse if you're going to give us like 2. And also on top of everything else, like the character of America Chavez, like everything about her character just like feels like the kind of character that's created that people go, she's a Mary Sue. Like, yeah, they're probably right about that one. Like, because she's a poorly written character that is, and like that actress was given short shrift. Like, you're being introduced in a Doctor Strange movie, and you're expected, like, she's given nothing to do. Benedict Wong is given nothing to do. Benedict Cumberbatch is given nothing to do. Or not Benedict Wong. Is that his name? That is his name, isn't it?
I don't remember.
But like and then at the end of the movie, they have the post-credit scene that feels like an even bigger, like, what is going on in this franchise now? So yeah.
It is Benedict Wong. It's really weird that they're both named Benedict.
That is weird, right? I just realized that. It's kind of random. Yeah, I think Multiverse of Madness, if I wanted to be a troll, I would have said Quantum Mania, but I would never do that to you, because I guess then you would have said, what, Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not the worst one, because it does have some redeeming qualities. Number one, by far, is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This movie is the worst thing the MCU has ever shat out, and it does not even deserve to be talked about here. There is nothing nothing good about this movie. You have fucking Michelle Pfeiffer, and you say, you know what? Let's make you just a nobody in this terrible, awful movie done completely on green screen that looks god awful the entire time. You waste Paul Rudd, you waste Michael Douglas, you waste Michelle Pfeiffer, you waste everybody. This movie sucks so bad. And then Jonathan Majors.
And then the Jonathan Majors of it all is really bad, right? Like, that's the real problem. It's like Jonathan Majors is just, that's the last thing anybody wants at this point, is a guy like that involved in your franchise. And look, realistically, Disney should have done their fucking due diligence, because this shit was known long before that they hired him. This was like 2018 or something, right? Like, this was like a known thing. So Disney, you know better. You should have done better. I don't know why you didn't do better. You got too big for your own britches, I guess. I don't know. I wanted to ask you, as the kind of the capper here, is 2022 or 2023 worse for Marvel?
Ooh.
Because like looking at 2022 and 2023, movies from both of those years showed up on this list.
I think 2022 is worse, but only because Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 makes up for a lot of the poor movies in 2023. I actually quite liked Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, so that's it. Like Black Panther 2, it doesn't deserve to be the bottom 10, but it is not great either. It overall 2022 is just none of them were really good.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is more fun than Love and Thunder or Multiverse of Madness or Wakanda Forever. Yeah, 2022 is kind of hopefully that's the worst year that they have, but that's the thing. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, look, there are James Bond movies that people didn't like, but James Bond as a franchise persisted. I'm sure the MCU will be fine. The MCU is not going anywhere. It just probably won't be as prolific as it once was, but that's okay. People's opinions and tastes and needs and wants in superhero movies is going to change. And the MCU needs to get with it. They need to embrace genre filmmaking more so than they ever have, and actually let genre films exist in the MCU and stop trying to make everything seem like a James Gunn movie. And guess what? Now that James Gunn doesn't work for your fucking company anymore, and he's never going to again, stop having everything be a joke undercutting a serious moment, because I'm sick and fucking tired of it. And that's the worst part about the MCU, is that shit right there, period. There's nothing worse. That's the one criticism that the MCU needs to stop doing, and that's the only criticism they've never been able to get out from under since Guardians of the Galaxy 1, is this fucking endearing moments being undercut by a stupid joke. Stop doing it. Seriously. If you're gonna do a joke, just do a fucking joke. You don't have to undercut something else. You can just be funny. There are movies that are like that. They're called comedies. Just give it a fucking try.
On that note, our list as we laid it out, which is the bottom 10 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Number 10, Thor the Dark World. Number 9, Thor Love and Thunder. Number 8, Chris chose Captain Marvel. I blocked it, and it became The Eternals. Number 7, The Avengers Age of Ultron. Number 6, Iron Man 2. Number 5, I chose The Incredible Hulk. Chris blocked that, and I returned with Black Widow. Number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Number 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Number 2, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And the number 1 worst MCU film, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania. I hope you guys liked this. This has been a fun way to have a discussion about a bunch of stuff that we normally don't get to talk about.
Well, we technically talk about the MCU in every episode of Film Foundations.
Technically, I think we've missed 2, thank you. But they don't know about that yet. Thank you all for tuning in. This is going to be, like I said, a monthly recurring thing. And if you have not listened to Film Foundations yet, it is a very different show than what we just went over today. Film Foundations is a show built around a topic that's an actor, a director, a microgenre, or a film franchise, and we answer 4 very specific, identical questions about that every single episode. And those questions are super important, and you can listen to it because you want to learn about the topic, or you can listen to it because you think we're idiots and you want to argue with our topics. Either way, it's a good, fun time. Every other week we have a guest, and we got some great ones coming up. If you watch my channel, you'll probably recognize some of them. But either way, we want to say thank you for hanging out today. Chris, where can the people check your stuff out that's not Film Foundations?
WeirdingWayMedia.com is where you can see everything that I work on, which is, primarily my opinions on movies and, film analysis, TV show analysis, stuff like that. Weirding Way Media is where you can go to listen to the stuff I work on. A whole host of other things like The Projection Booth, Dark Destinations, Filmentaries podcast, the award-winning 80s TV Ladies podcast. All those things can be found at WeirdingWayMedia.com. And hey, you know what? I didn't get to mention it. Who doesn't love good frogs, right? Give it up for the frogs. Give it up for the frogs. Give it up for the frogs, baby.
The live ones and the dead ones. And as for my stuff, check out the Physical Media Advocate, the magazine, if you are interested in film and or physical media. We talk about all kinds of things in there, and I get some voices from all around the world to wax poetic about our modern film criticism or the Zapruder film, like in the last episode, or giving a loving tribute to a director or anything else under the sun. It's just based around film and physical media. On that note, this was the State of the Union for June 2024, and we can't wait to see you on the next one. Have a good weekend.
Bye.